Okay, here we are. We've got the MSR Windburner 2.5 liter pot with stove. We did a nice little hike out here. Came out to a beautiful area. We're in a little bit of a canyon-y kind of area. It's really windy today, so we decided we'd hunker down right here and do some cooking. On the menu today, we have some beef stew. That's what we're planning. The dogs are out here having a good time. They're playing around. So let me talk about this pot. This little ball, this little roller here is coated with rubber, and you could just roll your thumb onto it. It's pretty cool. So that'll allow you to take the lid off, and you can see that the stove and the fuel canister both house very neatly inside the pot. So again, this is a 2.5 liter pot. So I've got my fuel cell, and you also have a little bit of a kind of a rag. So the legs on the stove are really neat. Trying to do this one-handed here. You just pull these legs straight down, just like this, and then they spring out on their own. Pretty cool. Just like this. Very simple design. Just pull them out, then they pop out on their own. So that's your stove. This is the Windburner technology. It has the same little wire here that the original has. The only difference that I've noticed is the pot does not have those infusion or whatever they call it that helps distribute the heat, but it is what it is. Now the aluminum lid has a little bit of a dent in it right here, and that dent corresponds to this little notch here. So put that in, and then you just roll this on, and that's how you lock your pot lid shut. This wind is just making things a little bit more difficult than normal. So we got the stew meat here. Just popping it in the bag there. Nothing too crazy. The wind is our best friend when we have the Windburner. This stove does good in windy conditions, so it's actually kind of a plus that we have wind. Not that we want the wind, but good for the video because it'll show the stove performing in the wind. So we're going to take the meat, just put it in the bag, just like that. And we're going to put a little air in there and just rough that meat up and get it all coated real nice with flour. We'll let that sit for a second. Let's get that little piece down in there. So get everything nice and coated. Look at that. Everything's nice and coated with flour. So now, let that sit for a second, and I'm going to fire up the stove again because now I'm ready to actually start cooking. You'll see that little wire glow. Yep, we're lit. See that little wire getting red? That's it. Now let's pull this open, set the pot on, and we're going to take a little bit of vegetable oil, nothing too crazy. Something like that. Let this thing get nice and heated up, and then we'll throw the meat in here in a second. The oil is nice and warm, so we're going to go ahead and drop the meat down in there, start to get these things to sear a little bit. Just dropping them down in the bottom here. Let them cook a little bit. You can see that the stove puts out a good amount of heat. More pieces. Plenty of meat in here in this bag. And if you get a little bit of extra flour, that's actually good. It'll help thicken things up, and it'll help with the stew. It'll make it nice and tasty too. It'll give you almost a gravy effect. So if you get a little extra flour, don't worry about it. So I'm just feeling around for little extra pieces of meat. And I'll be keeping this flour handy because if at the end the stew is too thin, I'll use this as a thickening agent. So I'm going to keep that real close. to where I'm at. And let's get these babies turned. I'm going to turn the heat up a little more. And we're just searing this meat. Just letting them go for a little bit. The wind is actually giving us a good indicator as to how this stove will perform in real conditions. And it's doing pretty good. Most stoves would have really been struggling right now because we're getting a pretty heavy crosswind coming through here. So most stoves would have already been having a hard time. And this Windburner 2.5 liter pot is doing pretty good. You can see that they're starting to brown a little bit. That's exactly what we want. We want to seal in that flavor. And the meat is just about done. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some beef broth in there here in a second. And then we're going to start putting our carrots and then eventually our potatoes and our mushrooms in there. In fact, we can even start throwing them in right now if we wanted to. Bit of carrots, get this beef broth going. We'll just pour that in there nice and juicy. Then that'll allow us to turn the heat up again. So we'll pour about that much in for now. We'll save the rest. And from here, we'll just kind of mix that stuff in and let it come up to a boil. Now all these potato peels and carrot peels and stuff, this is just going to be thrown down, and some animal, maybe a coyote or deer, elk, something will come eat this stuff. So it's not going to hurt anything, but we will pack out all of our trash, obviously. There's one thing that really frustrates me, and that's when I see people not packing out their trash. You know, this natural food material is okay. Now these potatoes, I'm just going to make them kind of wedges, big chunks. We're going to make a hearty beef stew today. So they're just big chunks going in the pot. That's starting to smell good. And we added a little bit more beef broth. Now we're adding our celery. And it's starting to smell good. It's starting to smell like stew. And I'm making all the chunks real big. Look at that beautiful knife right there. Yeah, check that out. So we'll let this cook a little bit. I've got the stove on high. The stove is performing absolutely marvelously. So we'll set this here, put the lid back on, and we'll catch you in a few minutes. I like the aluminum because it cools very quickly, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, the last thing that we're going to add is a healthy amount of mushrooms. I love mushrooms, so we're going to put a bunch of mushrooms. This is half of a pallet of mushrooms. That's going to go in our stew. Man, that stuff is smelling good. Oh my gosh, it smells good. I wish you guys could smell it. It smells delicious. Look at that. Okay, let's add a little more broth. We're gonna fill this thing up. Bag flying behind me. I'll catch it in a second. Fill that baby up. Some beef broth. We'll get this baby covered here soon, and we'll let that stuff cook. Oh my gosh, that is gonna be delicious. And that's gonna be good. Let's take a look at our stew. Ooh, look at that. Set this down here. Ooh, yeah, that stuff you could, oh man, I wish you guys could smell it. It smells amazing. The mushrooms are shrunk down. I pulled a carrot out a minute ago, a big carrot, and I checked it, and the carrots are almost done. So this stew is almost done. I'm gonna let it continue to cook a little bit more, and then we'll update again here in a minute. Oh, but it smells amazing. We checked the carrots are done, the potatoes are done, and the celery is just about done. But I'm noticing that and the meat's obviously done, mushrooms are done, but I'm noticing that the stew is still a little bit thick. So I'm gonna take a little bit of flour, just a little bit, and I'm gonna thicken up the stew a little bit because we're about ready to eat. So I'll just mix that in, let it boil a little more, and that'll help thicken our stew. What the flour will do is it'll absorb the juice. You can see that it's already working. So this stew is almost done. Boy, it smells good. And the MSR Windburner 2.5 liter pot and stove worked great. And it's been breezy the whole time. Look at that. I mean, that is a hearty bowl of stew right there. The stove performed amazing. This is a brand new stove by MSR, brand new for 2018. They sent me this one to do a review on, and it's been nothing but a pleasure to work with. This has been a great stove. Very, very fuel efficient stove. And this stew has turned out fabulous. There's really good flame control on here. I brought this fuel canister out earlier, but it wasn't full. It was pretty empty, so it ran out of gas. But this is a great stove, great setup, and now it's time for us to sit down and eat. So if you can look at the bottom of the pot, there's this little ring right here, and that little ring just very nicely corresponds to the stove, so you don't have that feeling that you might tip over your food. You don't really get that feeling. If you push this little red button right here, it unlocks the handle. And the handle, this whole pot is very lightweight. The legs on this stove are nice. They just fold up like a toggle bolt, and they fold right up into the stove. It's a very, very neat setup for the stove. You just pull them out and they spring into place. Pull them straight down, they spring out into place. They're really cool legs, and they have a nice wide platform that is very stable. It's a really neat stove. They did a really good job on the regulator here, and this valve control, this flame control, works very good. I'm really impressed with this stove. I want to say thank you for joining me today on this video with the MSR Windburner 2.5 liter pot and stove combination. This is a great setup. It's been pretty windy out here today as we've been filming this video, but the stove performed flawlessly. These vents right here that are in the bottom of the pot are important, because if you were to try to put a standard pot, like say you wanted to put this on there, and if the stove was lit and you put one of these on, what'll happen is it'll actually kill the stove because they don't have the airflow coming through. So for those of you that might be thinking that you could use a pot like this for a stove like this, I hate to burst your bubble, but that's not going to happen too easily. I hope you got some good useful information out of this video. Please feel free to leave your comments down below, like this video, share this video, and if you like the type of content that you see on my channel, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. And until next time, thanks for watching. Have a beautiful day, and get out and make you some beef stew. I can't wait to eat. It's going to be fun.